lots of At the Bench members and lots of followers on Periscope will see this little soldering area that we have done here. This is simply made out of some soldering boards. We've got a soldering board for the back. This is about 30 centimetre square soldering boards. They're about 8-9 mil thick. One for the back, one for the bottom, and then one I've cut diagonally in half for the sides. Simply tapped it, screwed it, whatever you want to do it, put it together, and we've got a little fantastic little soldering area. And you can see I've got wallpaper behind and no heat comes out of here. It's completely safe, not even going through onto the Formica bottom. So let me just put this down so you can actually see what I'm going to be doing. Try and get nice and close again today. This is the crucible that we prepared, I think it was a few weeks ago now. That's in a simple long handle, and we've prepared it. We've put some borax, some powdered borax, some liquid borax, some flux onto the crucible. That is really nice and glazed, because if you'd rather use English measure and now stick to metric. Good man, Drennis. Don't listen to all these Americans saying you need to use 15 gauge, 16 gauge metal. Use the metric system. We all love that. Anyway, that's beside the point. So this is the ingot mould that we use. It's normally got a handle sticking out of here, but sometimes I've tapped it on the ground to get the mould out, the ingot out, and the handle snapped off. It's black because I use some 3-in-1 oil. It's always nice to put a little bit of 3-in-1 oil into the channels. It coats them with oil, and also then when the oil burns, it produces a nice carbon finish onto the ingot mould. This is really important if you've got a new ingot mould and there's paint on it. As Shelley just said, she's having problems getting the paint off her ingot mould. Put some flame on it, put a lot of heat on it, make sure all that paint is burnt off, and you need to prepare the ingot mould by putting oil into this. It'll produce carbon layer on the surface, which you can see my hands are getting filthy dirty just from touching it, and then it enables you to get the silver or the gold out a lot easier. Also, what I'm going to be doing is just melting down these little bits of silver that we've got here. That's going to go in my crucible, and because the ingot mould is about 6-7 inches in length, what's that in imperial? 150, 180. You're more than welcome, in length. When you pour the silver in, it's likely, exactly, well done, Drennis, Mr. Baker as well. When you pour the silver or the gold into the ingot mould, sometimes the silver will hit the ingot mould and it'll just spread out along the ingot mould, and you won't get a nice thick ingot. The little tip that I suggest you do is get a little bit of tissue paper or a cigarette, filter paper, whatever you've got, put it in some water, okay? And then you can put that into your ingot mould. And the idea is then we are going to pour the silver into this little area by here. The silver then will not travel any further along here because of the bit of tissue paper. Let me just turn that around so we get a nice end to that. So that is going to stop the silver from flowing all the way, and that's going to produce a nice little ingot this particular size. Didn't quite catch that. Do I clean my scraps? This is a nice little bit of scrap silver that we've got. This is nice and clean. There's not much of a area of solder. What I wouldn't do, and I've got my this is my silver scrap pot. I would not necessarily use these bits of chain, because there are lots and lots of bits of solder in with that chain. And solder, if you're starting to melt it down and melting it into some actual pieces, does it matter if you're not sure if it's not also? It does matter. You've got to check. You've got to check each and every piece. This is all of our silver scrap, and to be honest, I've looked through here and there are some pieces that are not silver. That we've actually bought in as silver. So it's our mistake. Like this ring here, that isn't silver. So you do have to make sure what you buy in is actual silver, not silver plate, or even some of this rubbish that you get off some auction sites that say it's Tiffany bracelets when it isn't. Also, don't forget, we actually need some glasses as well. Let me turn this around so you can see. So, glasses on as well. safety is such a precaution. I don't necessarily need any ventilation here. We've got a window by the side of us, which is no problem at all. Health and safety exactly. Even though I've got glasses on, I still like to put safety glasses because there's a bit of a side to them and they will protect my eyes. For this particular demonstration, I'm using a Smith's little torch. This is an oxygen and propane torch, which really gets the metal really fast. I have some pieces that didn't work out, some solder, of course. How do I melt those? Sometimes it's best, let me take this off the stand. Sometimes it's best if the silver isn't really melting, you perhaps would have to melt it down with a little bit of fine pure silver, perhaps just raise the carat a little bit just to see how that works. Also, I'm going to be explaining a few things as I go along now. Silver particularly loves oxygen. Silver, Drennis, this is a number 6 tip on this particular torch. We don't change the tips, we use the number 6 or number 5 for virtually everything that we do. An easy torch would work exactly the same. Any torch that you've got, a sievert, even the little handheld propane torches, that would work as well. Just take that little bit longer. Hello, Parfan Tori, good afternoon. Hello. So, yeah, you can try melting it down. I'm going to explain a few things as I'm going to be melting down. If you find that when you melt down it's starting to crack when you roll it or hammer it out, try melting it down again, but with less. Yep, your map torch, your map gas, exactly right, Monica. Don't use as much oxygen. Try and use less oxygen. You don't want the flame to be really hissing. Okay, you need it just a gentle, nice, hot flame. If you hear the flame hissing really too much, you're using too much oxygen. Let's pop this back down and show you what we're going to be doing. All right then, so we have nice contained area. Get my oil out of the way. We've got oil in the crucible here. We've got our prepared ingot. We have got our silver. So this is our flame. What we want to do is add some air to this. If you have a flame that is sounding and looking like this, okay, absolutely no good. Is too much oxygen coming down that, so you need to reduce that so there's less oxygen. Too much oxygen, the silver absorbs the oxygen and it can make the silver crack. Put the ingot mould behind of where you're melting down, because then as you're melting down the ingot mould is going to heat up. It's always important to have a warmish sort of ingot mould. Let me just take that out there a second. Let's just melt this oil a second. It's always important that your ingot mould is warm, not freezing cold, because when the metal lands inside that ingot mould, if there's too much of a shock, radiant heat, exactly, yep. If you find that the metal is being shocked by cooling down too much, it will literally explode in your face, and that's actually happened to us on a couple of occasions. So I'm just basically just burning off that little bit of oil that we've got. Don't we love fire? We absolutely love fire. So make sure you've got some of that oil burnt off. Get the flame. What kind of oil? This is simple. In the UK we use this 3-in-1. Nothing special, just simple 3-in-1. When you see the silver starting to melt down, there we go, excellent, 3-in-1. Thanks, Drennis. When it's starting to melt down, a little bit of borax, sprinkle it over the top, start to melt down. Also, you need to make sure that the crucible is also nice and warm. It has happened to us on a couple of occasions. Also make sure that what you're melting down does not contain anything hollow. I'll come to that in a second, Redney. Make sure there's nothing hollow that you're melting down, because the air inside the hollow item could explode, could heat up too quickly, and it would cause the silver. Andrew, are we video calling later or phone? It's video, Shelley. It's video. So for those who are watching at the moment, ideally to do with the group that we have on Facebook, it's a private group, I'm afraid. There's a few people on here at the moment that are members of it. Just to reiterate, you need to have the app open on your PC or on your phone, and preferably it's a webcam we need, not necessarily just audio, but if that's all you have, well, that'll be just fine. So you can see the paper's not necessarily burning because it's soaking wet. We've got the silver, as you can see, starting to melt down. It does take a while because the crucible does take up a little bit of heat as well, so it's important that we get the crucible heated up as well. Oh, excuse me. And just simply warm up. As I said, you don't need to have too much oxygen. You don't need to have a flame that sounds like this. I'm afraid it is purely a secret closed group, I'm afraid. I can let you know more about that at a later date. Okay, the borax is going on. The borax helps the metal melt down. As you can see now, we've got the metal that's nicely melted down. It just helps the metal melt, basically. It just nicely smooths out the metal. It sort of gets rid of any impurities. More of a carbonizing flame. Yeah, perhaps not quite a carbonizing flame, not completely. Bit more borax on the top helps clean the surface, helps clean the metal. If I'm going to tip it up this way, so the flame is now actually going onto the crucible. I'm also going to tap the crucible as well. Any little impurities, any perhaps little springs from little clasps that you've got in there, anything that shouldn't be in the silver, when you tap it, it'll come to the surface, swoosh the crucible around. Any impurities then, little bits, you know, the old scale of the old skin and the old bit of perfume that's caught in there, comes out and sticks to the outside of the ingot. The crucible, sorry, I'm getting them the two mixed up today. So, once you've got the metal molten, as you can see it's nicely molten, wait about another 20-30 seconds. Make sure the silver is completely molten all the way through to the inside. The surface may be looking completely molten, but the inside may not be the same temperature as the outside. So we're just going to wait a little bit longer. Then we're going to lift up the actual crucible up to the ingot mould. Make sure that the pouring channel is directly above where you are going to pour it. In fact, I may actually just move that paper up a little bit more. There we go. Make sure that your pouring channel is now right over where you want the ingot to pour to. Bring the flame towards the tip of the crucible as well. And in one gentle motion, pour it out. And really, it's as simple as that. Just going to get a pair of tweezers. There we go. So you can see the paper here. Now I'm popping terms out. Nice one, Dreners. So this is the tissue paper that we put in place. As you can see, it's still in one piece. It has stopped the flow of the silver. This brown on top is flux. And because we have put carbon, there's a carbon layer, we put oil in the surface. There's our, my voice is going, do apologise. There's our ingot. What I would do with that now, I would put that in some acid. Excuse me a second. I would put that in the acid. The acid then would get rid of all the flux off the top. And that's a little ingot then that we can start to use, whether we want to hammer it out or start to roll it out. There's our crucible. You can see as we start to use the crucible, it starts to go all brown. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's no trouble at all.